Welcome back, everyone. We are in lesson 3 of our sketching series, and today what we're going to do is focus, first of all, on pencils, talking a little bit about the tools that we've been using up until this point when it comes to our sketching. So I want you to stop and just take a look at the pencil that you've been using, and note you maybe never really have taken a good long look at your pencil before. They come in all different colors, sometimes different sizes. So they're pretty cool. We find them all around. We use them on a daily basis. We see them all the time, but maybe you've never really stopped to take a look. So today, that's what I want us to start with. When you're looking at your pencil, you will notice it might tell you where it was made. It might tell you what type of pencil it is, maybe the company that made it. But I want you to really focus at the very top. So yours may look like mine, or it may look like a little bit more like this one. And I want you to take a look at what is written. So when I look at the tops of these pencils, I notice that the letter H and B is printed. These letters tell us a lot about our pencil that we're using. What they actually tell us is what type of graphite this pencil consists of. Now, graphite is important. It's the part in your pencil that makes all the marks. It's this gray sort of silvery part. And when we're creating and when we're sketching, we do want to know what kind of graphite we're using, because depending on the look and the goal of our drawing will depend on what kind of graphite we want to use. Most people on a day-to-day basis, when you're in school, when you're working in math class or writing something down, generally you're using an HB pencil. It's a pretty all-purpose pencil that's used for most activities in our life. The H and the B do stand for certain things. The H stands for the hardness of the graphite that is in that pencil. And knowing the hardness of your pencil is important, because the harder the graphite, the lighter the line you're going to get. So have you ever picked up a pencil in the past? I know I used to do this all the time when I was younger, and I didn't understand what the types of graphites were. And I'd pick up a pencil and I'd be ready to start drawing, and it didn't matter how hard I pressed on my paper, it would just give me a really light line. And it didn't matter how much. I mean, I would put a hole in my paper before I got it really black and really dark. And that's because that was a very hard graphite pencil. And so it doesn't matter how much pressure you use, it's never going to get dark. If anyone's had this experience right now, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it can be very frustrating if you are trying to actually make a darker mark. The B on the other side has to do with blackness, which makes sense, because the higher on the B level or on the B scale that your graphite is, the blacker the mark you can make. And we know that we want a good variety of shades when we're creating images, because that really is what creates the illusion of depth and volume in our objects. And so having these varying degrees of blackness is really important and can make our drawings look a lot more professional, have a lot more depth. So I want you to think a little bit about this as a scale, with HB being the middle of your scale. So this is kind of your all-purpose, run-of-the-mill, good for most things type pencil. As I mentioned, as you go down the scale, generally they go down by 2. So you count by 2s, and we have our 2H, our 4H, our 6H, our 8H, and so on. And as you go down this, it gets lighter and lighter the further down the scale you get, because the lead is getting harder and harder and harder. On the flip side, this is the side artists like you and me like to hang out in. This is our B side of the scale. And just like the H one, it goes up generally in 2s. So we have our 2B, our 4B, our 6B, our 8B, and so on as we move down that scale. And again, as you go up the scale, the marks you're able to make become darker, because your lead is getting softer. Softer, harder. Okay? So if you are lucky enough to have your art pencils at home with you, or maybe you can even scavenge around, take a look in some drawers or some of your pencil bins, that kind of thing, because you might be lucky enough to find a couple of these B pencils in there. And so what you can do is you can start looking, and you'll notice when you find one, instead of HB up at the top, it's going to say what kind of a pencil it is. So here's my 6B. I don't have, that's the only one I could find, so I only have a 6B here at home. I do generally have lots of different types at school in the studios, but right now this is what I've got, so that's what I'm going to use, not a big deal. But I do want you to know that when it comes to artist pencils, we aren't just sticking to our standard shape or size that we're used to. If you take a look at this, these are just some graphite sticks that I have. And I'm not sure if you can see in the light, but here you can see this one's a 2B. This is a 4B. Can you see that? And then here's a 6B. I'm not sure if I can get it in the light for you. 6B. And so notice that depending on what I'm doing, what kind of drawing I want to create, maybe I want a thicker line, you know, maybe I want to be able to do a bit more shading like this. And so these sticks can be really handy. They give me a very different look than if I'm just using my pencil. So these are available at any art store. So Curry's is a great art store that we have in Whitby, but I'm sure depending on where you live, there may be other ones. I'm not sure if Michael's carries these kind of things. They probably would carry the different types of pencils, and I know that Walmart for sure does. They have a little sketchbook section and pencil section in their stores. So take a look around. Definitely you could find them on Amazon, that kind of thing too. So you can find them in all different places, but again, certainly not necessary for what we're going to be doing together. Just wanted to show you the different types, and you'll even see there's some cool ones that are just graphite. So if I look at this, you'll see the entire part of this pencil is just graphite. It's nice and dark. Oh my goodness, look at that. Awesome. So depending on what you're using, depending on how into sketching you get, you may want to start looking for a few of those other materials or tools to be using, just to kind of, you know, see how you can use them in your work. But what I want us to do today is we are going to use whatever pencil that we have on hand. So here I have my HB, and we're going to do a grayscale. A grayscale is something that artists use, but usually before they started drawing, just to understand how much, how many shades and how dark they can get the tool that they're using before they head into their drawing and start implementing it in the creation of something that they want to do. So a grayscale is simply where we take a little box like this, and you can follow along, do the same thing. I'm going to divide it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 spots. What we're going to do is we're going to go from lightest to darkest. So in our first box, we're going to color this in as light as we can. So I still want to see it, so don't make it so light that you can't see it. Then we're going to go to the next one, and we're going to apply slightly more pressure and see the difference. See that? So that's slightly darker. Then I go to this one, I'm going to do it even a little bit more. I'm just coloring it in. If yours are not getting darker as you go, then you need to press a little bit harder. The goal is that we want it to go from lightest to darkest. And each time I fill in a box, I'm pressing a little bit darker, but I'm certainly not putting a hole through my page. I'm not giving myself a cramp. I'm not doing anything like that. So don't press too superpower that you are putting a hole in your page. That's not going to be good for your drawing. And it does not, you don't need to be in the lines. This is just so that we can kind of see. So you can see now I've got my grayscale. I've gone from my very lightest and I've worked my way up to the darkest I can get without putting a hole in my paper or making my hand hurt. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put HB, because now I can see that's the range that I'm getting from my HB pencil. If you have another pencil, if you have an H pencil at home, or if you have one of the B pencils at home, then let's do another one just so that you can kind of see the difference. And if you don't have one at home, I'm going to do it for you really quickly so that you can. This is my 6B because that's what I've got at home, so that's what I'm going to use. If you happen to have a 6B at home, just even by writing with it, you'll notice it's so soft. You feel like you're going to have to, you know, your lead is almost just like melting off of your pencil because it is such a soft lead. So I'm going to do basically the same level of intensity. You can already see, look at the same lightness, so the same intensity and pressure. Even with the 6B, I'm already getting a darker, a blacker, that's what the B stands for, shade. And I'm going to do a little bit more, a little more intensity. I'm hardly even pressing. You can see how dark it is, and I'm hardly even pressing at all. It's because it's such a soft lead, because it's so high on the B's. So you can see, I mean, my third one in is almost as black as the second last one on the HB. Pressing a bit harder on this one. And as I work my way up, I don't know if I can get it any darker, can I? Wow, look at that. It's so dark. So I'm able to get a much richer, darker black than the HB. It's a lot softer if you're able to use the 6B pencil, or if you ever get the chance, maybe when you're back at school, to use it. I would encourage you to try it because just the feel alone is so different. And so as an artist now going into a sketch, I can say, okay, I've got a good idea of what my different ranges of pencils can do. And so often when people are sketching, they'll use multiple pencils depending on if they want something really light or if they want something really dark or somewhere in between. If you are only able to pick up one or two of these artist type pencils, then I would strongly encourage a good 2B or 4B. You really can't go wrong. Those are my personal favorites that I like to use. But if you're lucky enough to be able to pick up an entire pencil set, I have some, but I don't know where they are right now. My studio is kind of a mess. So they come in a little aluminum tin, and they'll give you the range of B pencils, and they'll probably give you a couple of the H pencils as well. And so you'll have everything you need to sketch at any shade that you want, at any darkness that you're looking for. So this is a little bit about pencils, why we use them, how you learn about them. So now you can actually teach your friends and family about that because you understand how to read your pencils and what those actually mean, what those letters and numbers are actually standing for. So well done. I would encourage you right now, if you think you might have a 2B or 4B, one of the B pencils laying around in your house, just pause this video and go see if you can dig one up, because it'll be kind of fun to use that. And if you don't, not a big deal either, because as you can see, our HB pencil really does give us a good range of shades. And so it's certainly fine to use for this next step. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to use our knowledge of pencils and grayscales to look at shading. So what is shading? Shading is when we are creating the illusion of depth or volume using degrees of darkness on an object. So when it comes to shading on an object, we need two things. The first thing that we need, I'm going to use my HB because I know most of you at home are probably using HB, and so it just feels like it makes the most sense. So when it comes to shading, we need two things. One, we need an object. And two, we need a light source. So shading really happens when there's a light source, something shining on an object, and you notice that one part of that object is really light and lit up because it's closest to the light source, and the opposite side is much darker because it is hidden from the light source because the object is blocking that light source's rays. So just to start off, why don't we use our foreshortened square? You guys are total pros now at this one. And remember, same vertical line up. Awesome. So we've got our object, check, and now we need a light source. So I'm going to make the sun. I'm going to do it in my top right corner. So if I'm thinking about this, I know my light source is shining down on my object. If I follow one of these rays of sunlight down, I know that the part of the object that is closest and directly in line of this ray is going to be the lightest part of the object. I know that the part that is on the opposite side is going to be the darkest. It's where the shading is going to take place. So what I'm going to do, and when you have an object like our foreshortened square that has defined edges and sides, it makes it really easy because we just shade it right in. I'm going out of the lines and I don't care. You shouldn't either. Don't worry about it. There we go. Maybe this one you want to shade this, you know what, this kind of slip, but I don't mind. I'm going to use it to my advantage. This isn't directly in the sun, so it's getting a little bit of shading. And do you notice how all of the sudden this looks even more three-dimensional than this one without the shading? So what we're trying to do in this drawing series is learn our new concepts, use them with the other concepts that we've mastered so that we can put all of them together to have the most impactful and dramatic sketches possible. So this is a really great job. Well done. I want us to try it again, but this time, have any of you guys tried to break a few of the rules? Remember, I was telling you that certain things have to be done, but you know, with artists, once you learn a couple of rules, we like to learn them just so that we can start breaking them a little bit. So what I'm going to do is show you this foreshortened square. And remember how I told you these ones always need to be nice and vertical, straight up and down. Well, what would happen if we just decided not to do that? Well, let's give it a go. I'm going to try and curve these ones in and see what happens. So I'm curving this in. I'm curving this one in. These rules we can break, no problem. One rule we can't break, they need to be the same length. And this guy needs to be longer and straight. And then we're going to attach them. What do you think? I like it. I think it's kind of cool, kind of wonky. So that's awesome. Then what I can do, if this is my light source, it's coming down. This side is my lightest, this side is my darkest. It's got defined edges and planes. And so because of that, we're just going to color in the one that's on the opposite side. And if you like this, we can do that too. If you want to emphasize the bend, you can shade so that it kind of is the same direction as this line. I didn't do that here. You could try that if you wanted. Looks really cool. Let's try the opposite. Maybe we are going to do our foreshortened square, but this time we want it to go out. I can play around with how it looks on the outside, but I can't mess around with these rules. These rules can't be broken. It has to be the same length. This one goes straight down, and this one joins up. That gives you a different look. Sometimes students tell me this one looks like a Jello mold, like it looks like it could be a little bit wiggly. It might look like a keyboard key for you. And again, if our light source is here, We know the opposite side is on this, so it's going to be our darkest. If I wanted to emphasize that curve, I could by making my shading like that. You can see it really just emphasizes that. Maybe at this point you're not too worried about it, so we don't have to do that either. Looks good, right? And then again, this one is slightly shaded. So we'll do it like that. So what I want you to do right now is maybe make one of your shapes, or maybe you want to put some shapes together. So maybe I'm going to do, I like this guy. I like how he bends in. So I'm going to draw him. And then maybe I'm going to put him on top of another box. This one's going to be our regular one that we were used to. Oops, I didn't put my dot at the bottom. Not a big deal. Got ahead of myself. And then I'm going to join them up. And maybe I think this looks kind of like a little, maybe it could be a little house. Maybe this is a wonky chimney. So I'm going to put a door in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this vertical line. I'm going to go up. I'm going to follow this vertical line and go up. I could follow this line and make my door square, but just for fun, I think I'll curve it. And if I'm looking at my door from this angle, then I would be able to see inside. I'd be able to see the thickness of the walls. I'm going to bring this down, mirror this line right here. Oh, I just realized you guys can't see that very well. So hold on, let me just, there we go. I've just put my eraser in so that you can see it a bit better. So sorry, I went straight up. I rounded off the top. Then I'm just mirroring this angle and joining this up. If I wanted to, I can erase this. Then I think about where my light source is. If this is shining down from the top right, where is my shading going to be? It's definitely going to be here. It's going to be here. So this is where when you have more than one object in your scene, you have to start thinking, okay, what is everything that's going to get shaded? And depending on how dark you want that side to be, will depend on how dark or how hard you press on your pencil. There, now do you think I'm finished? You're right, I could do lighter if I felt like it. So these planes would both be light, like a lighter shade of gray. Are we done? Who guessed right? This little area right here. If the sun is shining on it or the light source is shining on it, notice it is in complete darkness. And so it would also be our darkest shade. Wow. That looks amazing. Good job, everyone. What a difference using shading, understanding how to use a grayscale, and just knowing a little bit more about how to use your pencils makes when you are creating your images. So what I would love you to do right now, if you have some time, you can go to a fresh piece of paper in your sketchbook and create a new scene if you're feeling really inspired. Otherwise, maybe you can go back to lesson 1 and add a light source into your drawing or into your practice rounds and see if you can add the shading in the proper spots and notice the difference it makes when you're doing it. I also would encourage you to play around with breaking a few of the rules. It can be a lot of fun when you're stacking things, even be crazy. I mean, if we took this and put it on its side, what would happen? We can just like bring it down, bring it down. Again, they're the same length. They're intersecting because I want it to look like it's sitting on top. And this one right here follows all around, but is just slightly longer. Then we join them all up. We erase. It's not transparent, so I'm going to erase it. And now we've got kind of a wonky, curvy chimney. It's cool. And again, we can start adding our shading onto it. And just creating even more depth and even more, this would really be in the dark over here. Wow, looks so good. So there's lots of things you can do to have some fun, play around with these concepts. So I would just encourage you to either revisit the drawings you did and play around with them, or start a new one and start a new design on another page and just have some fun with shading, with grayscales. And if you have some time, go look around in the cupboards in your house and see if you can find some HB, 2B, 4B, 6B pencils lying around that you can bring to our next lesson. All right, so thanks for joining me. Looking forward to seeing you again next time.